Oh, hell, Ozzy Osbourne.
And he said, let's see on his other end.
And I felt something go on my right foot. I'm like, oh.
Maybe Randy's been
I'm like,
All right.
in the closet.
Let me get you going. Let me go back to this.
We're really like just 10 feet away from the door. They break.
And let me give.
I did the math on the odds of that.
Let me hand you that.
All right, so
And let me give
I'm left
fly
clicking.
a perspective. Pardon the moving camera. Get that here so you can see Harley.
All right, so I'm left clicking, right?
Yes. And I will. All right, you're on camera and they can see your screen.
Oh, how Leo of me. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. My name is Harley Angel, and I am most indeed a witch. Now, this presentation I present to you today is going to come in like 4 parts. First, a description. Secondly, it's going to be a brief history on witchcraft. Third, great wizards in history. And then a summary of my adventures. Have you ever said anything like, oh, I see now? You weren't in the dark and you weren't blind. You just lacked understanding. And that's why I like scriptures so much. I like to have a definition of things. And as short as verbs or letters or words as possible. Get straight to the point. Let's see what a male witch is or what a witch is. I will go back one. Witch, a woman thought to have magic powers, especially evil ones, popularly depicted as wearing a black coat, pointed hat, and a flying broomstick. That's my first online dictionary. And yeah, they have little powers. Nah, nah, not really. So I made a second attempt on the online dictionary. There's more than one. A person, better, especially a woman, who is credited with having especially malignant supernatural powers. I gotta give them credit for using persons, but they went with the word malignant. Doesn't that mean infectious and growing?
Okay.
Yeah. My third attempt, I decided to go with the etymology of witch. I wanted to know the root word, where it came from. The word witch derives from Old English nouns. There's an S on the end of that. That's 2. Wicca, male witch, or warlock, or witcha, female witch. Witch is simply a title, like painter, or poet, author, builder. So this is the next one I really like. I found this one, and this is the definition of witch. A man or woman who has aligned themselves with their own infinite ancient nature, a healer, a wise man or woman, a co-creator with the universe, and a believer in the magical sacred divinity of themselves and in all beings. A witch is autonomous, somebody who aligns themselves with the cycles, seasons, and power of the earth and moon. Through ritual and communion, their physical bodies and Mother Earth are one. It continues. The moon speaks to them. The trees speak to them. Animals speak to them. The ancients speak to them. They live inside them. The powers are many times infused with love, the oneness is with all of nature and her creatures. Once hunted for their powers, but now at Earth's greatest need, they rise. That's definition. I like that. But the one thing I really want everybody to understand out of this whole thing right here is that a witch is autonomous. That means you have the right and the freedom to govern yourself and your own affairs. There's always a catch, though. Acting in accordance with one's moral duty rather than one's desires. Yeah, a little gray, okay, but that's all right. That means do as they will. Be responsible for everything you do. All right. A brief history of witchcraft. Paganism has been around and alive since the beginning of time. Documentations of magic and witchcraft exist even in the oldest texts. Numerous cave drawings all over the world depicts symbols of gods and goddesses who were worshipped throughout history. Paganism is the oldest religion. Now see, when the Moguls went out hunting for deer, antelope, buffalo, whatever, they literally drew what they found and what they ate, what they wore. But there was always one weirdo in the bunch who's seen something else. When the hunt was happening, they struck that animal with all the spears and the bows and arrows. The wise man or woman actually felt every blow. And when that creature fell down to die, our ancient brothers and sisters put our hands over that creature and thanked the spirit for giving its life, so that way my troop can live for one more day.
There you go.
Before the feast, we always gave thanks to Father Sky, and gratitude to Mother Earth. There was always one weirdo that was willing to play dress up. They run around the tree 3 times for protection every night. There's a lot to be protected from back then. Predators were everywhere. It's often very dark and very cold. You could be lost or abandoned very easily. And death was everywhere. Things got better for the Moguls and us witches. We started actually living in towns and huts, and we started farming, and witches were actually instrumental in farming. We actually knew what seeds to plant where. We studied the soil. We actually studied the timing of the seasons to know what to do. Also, this is when witches actually started to learn how to use herbs. This is also for herbs for healing, herbs for healing your heart. Anytime that you get a cut or a wound, or lost one of your loved ones, we figured it out. Also, there was herbs for just getting stoned, and herbs to tell Barney Rebel to go piss off. Yeah, I like the back one. It's not magical. You just throw it in their face and they go away. This is the time we learned the earth cycles, phases of the moon, and all glory is the sun. The next phase of human development, the witches were there. We had city-states like Samaria, Babylon, and Egypt. And many of our brothers and sisters went to go into the temples, become priests and priestesses. But many stayed out. The Moguls need help. They're cutting the stone, building the monuments, keeping the palaces and temples clean. But they didn't live in such places. They lived downwind, you know what I'm saying? They had their own towns outside of these places. But anytime that there was a wound that needed to be healed, or a heart that needed to be mended, there was a wise man or woman about a mile into the forest that would help them out. It's unclear exactly when witches came onto the historical scene, but one of the earliest records of the witches in the Bible, the book of 1 Samuel, thought to be written between 931 and 721 BC. Did the math, it's a long time ago. It tells the story of King Saul who sought the witch of Endor to summon the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to help him defeat the Philistines' army. To let you know how it turned out, not good. Not good for Saul at all. I think Samuel told him to piss off. Hey. Last, Egypt, and there were many gods, and there were many witches. And then Greece, again, many gods and many witches. And then came Rome. And they were pagan too. They had their own pantheon of gods. They even had great holidays that would last a week long. But they were pagan until Constantine said they weren't. And now the Roman Empire is now the Holy Roman Empire. And any teaching outside the church of the Bible is blasphemy. If you needed a new dressing for your wound, or someone just hurt themselves and you wanted to go help them, and it was outside the teachings of the church, and you wanted to go see the witch, you were in cahoots with the devil himself. Things didn't get much better after the fall of the Roman Empire. Modern Europe, colonial America, took place in the early modern period, 1450 to 1750, spanning the upheavals of the Roman Reformation and the 30-Year War, resulting in 35,000 to 50,000 executions. Most people are familiar with the Reformation. A lot of people aren't familiar with the 30-Year War, which was started by a Catholic visiting Pope.
Okay.
And he decided that everybody in Eastern Germany was going to be Catholic, whether they were pagan or Protestant. Caused problems. And a lot of these executions had to start with a book called the Malus Maleficum. Malus Maleficum was basically a witch hunting book. It labeled witchcraft as heresy, and it quickly became authority for Protestants and Catholics trying to flush witches out of their flush witches living among them. For more than 100 years, the book sold more copies than any other book except the Bible. That's because Muggles don't read. The Malus Maleficum acknowledged that the existence of male witches, although Kramer and Springer believed that the greater number of witches is found in the fragile feminine sex. I ain't never met a fragile witch in my life. More so than among men. They still devoted 3 sections of this book to types of witches that practice for men. Most important was magic archery, target practice with crucifixes. Yeah. Oh, and if you wanted, there's also another section in this book. If you wanted to give yourself over to the devil completely, you can have all the powers of a witch. You know, have sex with it. I don't know about you, but my devil has hips and dips. The Salem witch trials were a series of hearings, prosecutions of people accused with witchcraft in colonial Massachusetts between February of 1692 and 1693. More than 200 people were accused, 30 were found guilty, 19 were executed, 14 were women, 5 were men, and another man named Giles Corey was pressed to death for refusing to plead altogether. That's when they just piled rocks on you until dead. And then at least another 5 people died in jail. In Europe, 80% of the people executed were women. 80% of 50,000 people is a lot. So it's 20%. But in places like Russia, 250 people were executed. 75% of them were men, mainly homeless, day workers, minstrels that lived outside the city. In Iceland, nearly 300 people were executed for being witches, mainly over land disputes, family disputes. 92% of them were men. And finally, in Norway, 28 out of 59 people that were executed for being witches were male. And they were all shepherds. And they were accused for being witches because, you know, shepherds can turn themselves into wolves at night to protect the flocks. You know, everybody knows that. But it's all hypocrisy. Because outside the palace walls, you could get executed for witchcraft, but inside the palace walls, inside Queen Elizabeth's court, there was 2 wizards, John Kelly and Edward Kelly and John Dee. Somebody asked them if they were witches one day, and they're like, yeah, we're witch. No, we're alchemists. Oops. They just changed the name. But it was literally inside her court. I find a complete hypocrisy. Here's my first title for this one. Victorian Age and the Great Wizards, or Victorian Witchcraft, Seances, and Spirits, and How to Change a Course. Because by 1850, it was vogue to be a witch. What got you killed in 1750, even your Aunt Abigail is now doing. In addition to communicating with ghosts through seances and mediums, The Victorians were obsessed with fortune telling. Young women wanted to know their future husbands, and they often practiced things like mirror scrying to ascertain the face or name. Crystal ball gazing, palmistry, and cartomancy became parlor games, meaning that they were played in a person's living room as a means of entertainment. All these games were powerful forms of ancient divination, many being practiced by witches for hundreds of years. But this gave way to a lot of the great, what I call the great wizards, the great age of witches. Samuel Mathers, who started the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. There was W. Yeats, W. Watts, W.B. Yeats, and W.Y. Evan Watts were occultists and writers who became one of the Victorian era recordings of folklore and fairy tales from Celtic countries like Ireland and Brittany and more. And they were interested in ley lines and spirit guides. And they wrote a lot of books about fairies and fairy tales. If you've probably heard of a common story about a fairy, they probably originally wrote the story. There's Elidas Levi. Elidas Levi was born in France, esoteric, a poet, author, and more than 20 books about magic and Kabbalah, chemical studies, and occultism. He pursued an ecclesiastical career in the Catholic Church until, after a great personal struggle at the age of 26, he abandoned the Roman Catholic priesthood. And at the age of 40, he started to profess knowledge of the occult and became a reputed ceremonial magician. Now, I'm in the middle of reading Morals and Dogma. The book makes plain sense. It's not written in code. He's not pompous about it. He's not long-winded. Elidas Levi kind of got long-winded, talked in a lot of code, was a bit pompous. Speaking of pompous, well, that's not him.
That's right.
Pike was the first independent order of Oddfellows. The Masonic Lodge. He became extremely active in affairs of the organization. He was elected sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite of Southern Jurisdiction. He remained sovereign for the Grand Commander for the rest of his life, devoting himself to a large amount of time to developing rituals and for the order. He is very popular. And like I said, Morals and Dogmas was a great book. It's awesome. And then there's Aleister Crowley, turning the 19th century to the 20th century. Crowley, English occultist, ceremonial musician, poet, painter, novelist, and mountaineer. He founded the religion of Thelema and identifying himself as the prophet and entrusted with guiding humanity to the age of Horus, which is the age of the sun, right? Something like that. In the early 20th century, he was a prolific writer and published widely over the course of his life. Prolific writer is an understatement. He wrote so many books. I typed into the search bar, how many books did Aleister Crowley write? It just gave me one of these scrolly things. And just kept going and going and going. I think I was going to find my birthday. So why do so many moguls and so many ordinary people just think that only females can be witches? It's a common question, really. I mean, we know that both could be had. And I just gave you a big list of great ones. Well, go back one. Double click on it. I blame Hollywood. According to Hollywood, witches are ugly old hags with crooked noses, gifting riding bicycles, trying to steal your puppy, gifting poison apples, and wandering off the oceans with like a black octopus. Other than Harry Potter, naming any other major movie that had a male witch in it.
Maybe the House of Witches.
No, they're all wizards, right?
They call some of them witches.
Yeah. In the books, there were some characters that they called witch and head warlock and a few other titles. But it just cultural norm for the word.
The Judeo-Christian system, Constantine, the women were easy targets. The healers, they lived longer than the men, so a lot of them had a lot of property.
Oh yeah, they wanted the property and they wanted the money, the inheritance, and all that.
So they were targeted, politically targeted. even from the very beginning of Christianity, Peter was against.
Well, all this brings me up to the modern day, right here and now, and to my favorite subject. Me. I love to play dress up. And I titled this part, Something Funny Happened on the Way to Damascus. The Dark Ages. It comes complete with a haunted house at the beginning of the story. Mhm. From the age of 2 to 10, I was in this place, something similar to this. The thing about it, though, is that this piece of property was not supposed to be deeded out. It belonged to another group of people. But in the late 60s, in corrupt Hillsborough County, where it got real redneckish, you can grease enough hands and you can buy that piece of property right across the street from the Alafai River. Well, the house got completed, and she wanted to make the driveway possible, but there's a tree stump in the way. So she hired a friend of hers to come out with a pickup truck, tied a chain around the tree stump, and she stood beside the pickup while they pulled it away. The chain broke, the lock hit her right in the forehead, dead before she hit the ground. My dad found a cheap house for her because nobody in the family wanted to live in it. They couldn't sell it. My family moved in. And not only that the house was haunted or poltergeisted, things would move around, people would hear voices. I had a lot of little playmates. My dad had a very weird book collection. I would go to other people's houses. Where's your weird books at? They try to hand me Dr. Seuss, and I was like, no. My dad was reading stuff like this, and he was letting me thumb through it. I tried to figure out what's going on. All this made Harley a very weird boy at a very young age. I remember being in the 3rd grade, just drawing pictograms on everything. I'd go up to the chalkboard, draw a bunch of 5-point stars, go to my book, draw stars, go to my desk, all over my room. I was thinking, one day this is going to be a big part of my life. I don't know what the heck it is. Now I do. Like I said, I had plenty of playmates around the house. My mom would actually ask me who I'm playing with today, because she couldn't see them. I felt them all over the place. But one day, when I was 10 years old, right after my uncle died, it's like the veil just got thrown up. Just kind of stopped. Tapered off. I didn't even notice. It's not like I was blind. Not like I lived in the dark. I went to school. Made a lot of friends. Went to a lot of parties. A lot of parties. Fell in love. Got married. Had a baby, Haley. I know she's adorable. But then, after some time happened, when I was 48, a little cauldron got thrown back on the fire again. So I got pulled off the fire. Well, we cooked breakfast. Now I'm back on. You should have seen the look on my wife's face when I told her that I was a witch. Actually, she embraced it. And Haley too. There was no hiding, But I was having these weird dreams about geometrical shapes, just spinning. I was in this particular dream. I was flying like Superman through the darkness, and I seen this big fire growing. And I wanted to know what made it burn. I don't even know if there's oxygen in this place. Why is it burning? So I flew into the flame, and I seen the spinning tesseract. I still want to know what that means. Also, this is also another reason why I harp on this heart energy all the time. Because I feel it. I feel it when I'm in it. I feel it when I'm out of it. I feel it when I know I'm going in the right direction. I know when you heard of Abraham Hicks, when they talk about the vortex, through my heart energy, I know where I'm at in it. I know everybody can actually do this. It just takes practice. You got to feel it. This painting is called When Heaven Meets Earth. It depicts a man who's living in two worlds, or he sees two worlds. One that he has to live in, and another one that he sees. I can't give everything away. I'm not going to. But that's what it kind of looks like sometimes. I know the whole world is not solid matter. It's flexible. I was once blinded, but now I understand. I see. Because if that probably didn't happen to me, if I didn't get that belt thrown over me, I would have never met Joe, never met Haley, or had Haley. I probably never would have even came to South Florida. I think it was a divine event. So this brings me to a new journey. I don't know where it's going to go. But I'm willing to throw myself off that cliff. You know what I mean? I'm going to find out if there's feathers or if it's just lead down. I'm just going to let it tell me to go the way. I'm going to try to get that hard energy going in the right direction. Just let it guide me. I sure do hope cups is a big part of that. Really, I do. I think about it all the time. I know life comes with strife, struggle. It's all good fun, though. It's all play pretend. When you know that you're spirit living in a human body, you all play pretend. That's all it is. There'll be plenty of room for joyous occasions. Plenty of time for love. I know if if I make right decisions, and as a group we can make right decisions where we can take us, it could be the world. It really could. I'm not speaking through out of ego, I'm speaking through this with love. There's a difference. I don't want to be, out in front of anything. I just want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? I want to be part of the engine. So I only have one question for everyone here. There's one thing left to say. Who's coming with me?
I'm already there.
My name is Harley Angel. I'm the son.
Thank you, Harley.
So you like my cards?
What's funny is there's someone what's your favorite part.
Yeah.
That was excellent.
Thank you, Grandma.
I'm impressed. You got a lot of academia in you. I thought you were just a redneck.
I truly believe that I was actually brought down, guided down here, poured down here, taken down here for a reason. Yeah. Like I said, I just want to be part of the engine.
Dragonfly, we can hear you if you want to.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
How'd you like